Bill Gates betrayed them. Not good. What he did to Paul is unforgivable. And you know about the pain he caused Gary.
The pain is so great, he is destroyed. And basically, that's what happened to him.
Bill, is there a lesson?
Well, he's dead. So, in general, you always have to be careful.
No, I'm not talking about your boy Jeffy, the child monster. I'm talking about your childhood best friend, Microsoft's real OG co-founder, Paul Allen. You betrayed him while his life was fading away. Hard Drive from 1992 shows our Billy Boy didn't just become nasty overnight. No, Gen Z can't even comprehend what's in here. They should have never let that nasty boy out of jail. And that famous mugshot for speeding? You want to know what he kept in his back seat? Do you? His back seat was filled with empty milk cartons. He would toss the empty carton over his shoulder and continue driving. And Gates drank a lot of milk. Car smelled like sour milk, you sick monster. Bill was legendary for oil and dirt on his glasses. His hair, just as greasy. Dandruff everywhere. In this book, Gates never went anywhere without his dandruff. Ew, ew, ew. Microsoft men were appalled that Bill didn't bathe. Women couldn't breathe. One said his office, it smelled so bad, I thought I was going to be sick. And what he did to Paul Allen when he got sick is really sick. But people can change. Right, Bill?
No, I think you moderate. The idea of, am I still pretty much that same kind of curious, maybe I can figure this out that other people can't figure out. I'm still 95% that same person.
No, he moderates, and that's absolutely terrifying. To save his life, doctors said Paul Allen needed to undergo a brutal combination of radiation and chemo treatments immediately. It was a problem. For Gates, he was like, everyone's putting in 14-hour days minimum. This is no time to be lazy, Paul. Well, what did he expect, Paul? For you just to be pushing your little chemo drip thing around the office? Just keep on working as hard as you could?
Well, I think he was always pushing people to work as hard as they possibly could.
You included.
Maybe me more than everybody else.
And he was hard on everybody else. It was a pressure cooker, said Philip. To give you an idea, Philip Florence was hired to lead Excel as a manager. But when he told Gates he couldn't manage the project and write code at the same time, Gates exploded, slamming his fist on the table in a rage. One of the managers said, imagine an extremely smart millionaire genius who's 14 years old and spoiled and subject to temper tantrums. So Florence starts putting in 100-hour weeks and immediately has a heart attack and gets emergency bypass surgery. Bill just told you to work more. Now you're taking the weekend off for surgery? Florence returns to work, but he wasn't getting the job done. Gotta go. And this is a real skill, to find out an employee worked himself to myocardial infarction and casually say, well, that's too bad. Can't have a weak heart here. Fire him, Ida. Next. I'm joking. Bill Gates was shouting at Ida Cole about firing Philip Florence.
There's no way.
We'll figure it out.
You guys never understood. You never understood.
Ida Cole was Microsoft's first female executive, and she was not up to speed. She put off surgery to remove a massive tumor so she could launch Excel, and had just returned to the office 3 days earlier. Time for her to go too. 3 days was plenty of time to do 200 staff performance reviews and fire a weak-hearted man. And I know what you're thinking. 1980s? Why hire a woman in the first place? According to a well-placed Microsoft source, and this came directly out of Bill Gates' mouth, well, let's hire 2 women because we can pay them half as much as we will have to pay a man, and we can give them all this other crap work to do because they are women. And just in defense of Bill Gates, a lot of men who treated women like crap say the 1980s were awesome. But Bill, why treat Paul Allen like crap, like some 1980s Microsoft woman? Were you not satisfied with your cash cow?
Well, he worked for me, and I was younger, and I was never satisfied with his working hours.
Whoa. Paul was also a co-founder who was sick, so not just some employee you could work until his heart stops, but go on.
I was always pushing him to work longer hours. Sometimes our arguments were where we came up with our best ideas. So it was a great relationship, but the truth is it had its ups and downs.
Bill goes on to say Paul wasn't just a 1980s woman employee like his wife or his booty calls, who he could treat like crap, but Paul was similar to a brother who he could treat like crap.
A blend of love and rivalry, similar to how brothers might feel. Is that how you've always seen him? As a brother?
Definitely.
It just seems a little excessive to do what you did to your sick brother. Colleagues said their relationship was strained. They were having problems. There was a confrontation of some kind. What could it be? But when asked back then, Paul Allen protected Bill, denied it. And Paul was always protective of his stinky little bro. And Paul seemed genuinely hurt that anyone at Microsoft thought he wasn't grinding.
We would program until, 6 or 7 p.m., go have dinner, see a movie, come back, and basically write or cut code until 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning sometimes. So every day was like that.
Paul Allen was right there next to Bill, 3 a.m., coding like psychopath. Even when sick, throwing up for 4 hours straight after x-ray therapy, he'd go back to work and hustle. Why? Why, Gary V?
Hustle is the most important word ever. Guys, we're building businesses here. This isn't about parties.
Paul built that business, hustling, and yet Paul kept silent about what really happened for nearly 30 years. The confrontation? You want to know what really happened? Paul finally wrote in his memoir. One evening in late December 1982, I heard Bill and Steve speaking. Oh, Steve Ballmer, Scary Steve.
Developers. Steve
Ballmer was a Gates clone.
Do what they do. Watch them. Clone them. Take every one of their good ideas and make it one of our good ideas.
A clone who also liked cloning other companies, stealing. But Ballmer lacked Gates's charm or technical know-how. He was all of Gates's emotional tirades, verbal abuse, but with even more tantrums than Gates, if that's possible. I mean, it seems possible. I could see him walking around Thailand getting super weird. Paul Allen catches these two peas in a pod bemoaning my recent lack of production and discussing how they might dilute my Microsoft equity by issuing options to themselves and other shareholders.
Yes.
You issued 24 million new shares of stock. How much were your shares diluted? How much were his?
Zuck did the same thing. If you want to be successful, you have to be willing to steal from your only friend.
I was your only friend. Yeah, one friend.
I'm joking. Bill Gates had at least 2 friends. Gates and Winblad had such a special friendship, and Winblad, his ex-girlfriend, such a special friendship that his wife Melinda gave her approval for him to continue to take a week's vacation with Winblad every year for Bill to play putt-putt with his ex. Melinda French Gates was well aware of Gates' womanizing. Yeah, maybe you should have told him no. What kind of weird stuff did he do with Jeffy?
So whatever questions remain there of what I can't even begin to know all of it, those questions are for those people and for even my ex-husband. They need to answer to those things, not me. For me, it's personally hard whenever those details come up, right? Because it brings back memories of some very, very painful times in my marriage. And I hope there's some justice for those now women. What they went through is just unimaginable, I think. Well, let me say this. I think we're having a reckoning as a society, right?
You couldn't make him look more like a guilty putt-putt monster. In Bill's defense, when he was trying to sneak around with female employees, not his wife, he would email, "If this makes you uncomfortable, pretend it never happened." A real gentleman. Paul, focus. How much was Bill trying to steal from you?
They were basically talking about how they were wanting to dilute my share down to almost nothing. And it was really a shocking and disheartening moment for me.
And you were sick.
Well, I think I was still probably in the middle of radiation therapy.
Cold-blooded, but Paul Allen caught them. He burst in on them and shouted, "This is unbelievable. It shows your true character once and for all." He wrote, "It was mercenary opportunism, plain and simple. A heinous scheme to rip him off." Heinous, not just evil. According to his own best friend, Bill Gates was shockingly evil. Steve, did you guys try to take Paul's company because maybe he didn't deserve the credit?
Paul deserves so much credit for what Microsoft is. And without Paul's genius, without Paul's push, without Paul's insight, there's no Microsoft. Just not a chance.
This story gets way worse, but in Bill Gates' defense, chemo people do be taking way too many naps. This wasn't nap time.
Stop crying and just keep hustling.
Gotta hustle. And so what if you need to steal from your childhood best friend? Confused? Yeah. It looks like Paul Allen may have abducted Bill Gates, but he's only 2 years older. Remember, they were like brothers. But Paul described working with Gates some days as hellish. Listen to Paul's resignation letter. As I'm sure you realize, there is one primary reason that is the basis of my decision. I can no longer tolerate the browbeating or tirades. The kind of personal verbal attacks that you use have cost many hundreds of hours of lost productivity. In my case alone. Now the book gets dark, but I want to be balanced, so watch Bill Gates jump over this chair.
I'll cheat a little bit.
Yes!
I took a step before I did it.
It's okay.
See, he's not all bad. Paul, was Bill a screamer?
Screaming.
There was a lot of yelling.
No. Somebody's confused. Somebody's just not thinking.
Okay, I can't defend that. That is the face of a man-child that has never been slapped by the hand of respect. No respect, never learned it. His mother said her son has pretty much done what he wanted since the age of 8. Stephen King couldn't write a more terrifying opener. No respect, no friends. According to Paul, Grayson said there is only one person with fewer friends than Saddam Hussein, and that's Bill Gates. Now, Paul Grayson, that is a lie. Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer are great friends. Right, Steve?
Yeah, we've kind of drifted apart.
You know, what really happened?
You know, he and I had kind of always had what I would call a brotherly relationship in the good parts and the bad parts, and I just think towards the end that was a bit more difficult than not. So I think he had kind of a combustible situation, and I think I probably did some of my very best work at the company after Bill left, actually.
Oh, forget about Steve, Bill. You don't need friends, and Paul Grayson is just mad that you date-raped him financially, according to his own employee. Microsoft licensed Grayson's software, called Mirrors, back in the day, and immediately demanded to see the source code. Open the kimono, as the stinky nerds say. Well, Paul Grayson woke up stunned, angered. He realized that Gates had screwed him, copied his software, and then refused to return his phone calls in the morning. I hate when that happens. It's like the least you could do is buy the man breakfast, Gates. You could pretty much bucket all of Bill Gates' ideas into 2 buckets. Those he stole from other companies and Paul Allen's ideas. That's not just a random grown man with a cabin boy on his lap. It's Paul Allen and Bill Gates. Bill now admits, after decades of being accused of stealing credit from Paul Allen, there would be no Microsoft without him. Paul Allen might have appreciated those kind words when he was still alive and people just thought he was a lazy idea man. In 1974, it was Paul Allen who repeatedly tried to get Gates to join Microsoft. He was like, hey, there's this new Intel 8080 microprocessor. I think there's going to be all these new microcomputers, mini computers, and they'll need some basic app software. I'm paraphrasing. And that's why Paul Allen named his company Microsoft, for microprocessors and software. Bill was like, nah, come back when there's a machine. A couple months later, Paul Allen's walking around Harvard Square, says, oh snap, that's a machine.
I said, here, look at the magazine. You know, this is the computer we've been waiting for.
This is how the PC, the idea that we all have these computers, this is how it started.
Paul Allen shows Bill Gates the Altair 8800, the world's first home computer kit, and it finally clicks for our Billy boy. His TISM lights right up. And look at this ridiculous thing. There's no keyboard, no monitor, the memory of a goldfish. Nerds would just be flipping switches all day waiting for some stupid lights to blink.
Take something trivial like 2 + 2. Each 2 needed 8 different switches to be flipped. Then a 9th switch was used to load them all. The answer 4 was if the 3rd light from the left turned on. Eureka!
It took a long time.
I bet it did. And what happened if you lost power or you lost your way in the middle?
You cried.
Paul Allen said, babyface Billy, are we going to let crying nerds flip switches all day like baboons, or are we going to write some basic software that makes those ones and zeros speak English. What would you say it was, Papa Gates?
It was an addiction almost for him and a few others. They spent all their spare time in that little lab building where the computer was located.
He was an addict mentally, yeah, like Gary V. or
Gary, I got the dementia.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the only thing you're forgetting is how to work. Dropping L in the chat if you think my man should get the up and start working.
But Bill made them drink the Kool-Aid and expected his programmers to also work like addicts, 80 hours a week, more. Quote, "When they collapsed, you covered them with a blanket and turned off the computer." One Windows tester, Madman Newell, took his sleeping bag to work, only catching a few cat naps when he could no longer stay awake for a solid month. He held these stinky nerds captive. It isn't healthy. Gates wore his people down not just by his own personal tenacity, but wielded his formidable intellect like a blunt instrument. If angered, he became apoplectic, which I believe means a spoiled child, ends the world in a hissy fit of rage. In 1974, Paul knew how to make the new Intel 8080 microchip for microcomputers run virtually on a big computer. Within a month, Paul made a simulator that likely existed nowhere else. Paul and Bill could rapidly type on a $500,000 room-sized military-funded computer at Harvard because Paul transitioned that big girl into thinking she was a petite Altair, the mini computer with a new Intel 8080 microchip. Now, the secret to a lot of self-made billionaires is often free access to a military-funded supercomputer. But it was Paul who made them literally thousands of times faster than all the hobbyists who were flipping switches like crying baboons.
What happened if you lost power or you lost your way in the middle?
You cried.
Bill got all the credit. We'll get to who actually wrote BASIC, but it's Paul Allen's simulator that got them to the finish line in the first place. And if you're not first, you're last.
Trademark not to use
Microsoft was Paul Allen's idea, but Bill would say things like, "That was the most important idea I ever had," or Microsoft was based on my vision.
Microsoft was founded based on my vision of a personal computer on every desk and in every home.
Only my vision of a computer in every home was Paul's vision, which was literally printed in that issue of Popular Electronics, the one that finally pushed Bill to join Paul at Microsoft. So it really wasn't your vision, was it, Bill?
You know, so Paul, in terms of the vision of the company, he's absolutely critical.
Microsoft was founded based on my vision.
You know, there's really only two people, Paul Allen and then later Steve Ballmer, who if I hadn't had them, you know, the company might have never really succeeded much at all.
He still can't help himself, even now, saying if I hadn't had them, the company might have never really succeeded. But there's no I, and Paul Allen was the one that started Microsoft. Bill Gates would say, I dropped out and started Microsoft.
And it wasn't really till I dropped out and started Microsoft that
But we'll get to that lie. At 30 employees, it was still just me, a secretary, and 28 programmers. No mention of Paul inventing everything.
And it was really the urgency to get out there and be the first one to put a BASIC on the microcomputer that caused me to drop out.
You're called a genius, and no, I don't think that embarrassed you at all. They call you a genius.
And Bill is not embarrassed at all to take the genius credit. Now, in Bill's defense, he seems more socially than I am. Microsoft's first employee, Mark McDonald, said Bill Gates stole credit for Mark's standalone disk BASIC. This is nuts. This guy invented a completely new and much faster operating system and BASIC combined, and Bill took all the credit, even though Bill Gates did not write any of the code for it. When Paul Allen wrote the math package for the world's first successful laptop, a big effing deal, Bill said, I wrote all that code. Really? Paul Allen said, and threw the proof in his face. Bill froze in mid-rock, glanced down at the code, and muttered, yeah, you did write it. He'd get confused. He thought he wrote it because he's so utterly identified as Microsoft. It's like people putting on furry costumes. These people don't understand they're not cats when they take it off. It gets confusing when you lie to yourself for so long. No offense to the furry community. And Microsoft Basic, it was the coolest program I ever wrote. Just I, says Bill Gates. I. Say it enough times and eventually you'll say, Jeffy, I got the cooties. I need some antibiotics to surreptitiously give to my wife, according to a child monster. Right, Bill?
and that he was going to give you the medicine without you knowing. I wonder what your dominant emotion is when you read these news articles.
Sad. Just unbelievable sadness.
But others, like Ed Curry, who managed the Altair, said Allen deserves at least as much credit as Gates and possibly more, and that Paul Allen actually ended up writing the lion's share of what became Microsoft Basic. And even in that first version, Paul says Bill only wrote 45% of the code. Another 30% was Monty Davidoff, a Harvard freshman. Gates completely wrote him out of the story for years. The forgotten man. Monty says, I've gotten over it. Really? You got over it, Monty? Forget about the stolen credit. 30% of Microsoft is worth about $1 trillion, Monty. Are you over that? Anyway, Allen actually wrote 25% of Basic, plus his development tools. Billy wouldn't have written anything without Paul's simulator and macro assembler. This is stolen nerd valor. But Ed Roberts, can we trust Paul Allen?
Paul's a real laid-back kind of guy, real nice guy, real gentleman, always was a real gentleman. I think Bill Gates would be described pretty much as the antithesis of that. He's always sort of arrogant, always hard to get along with, always sort of a know-it-all, even when he was wrong.
Ed Roberts would know he invented the Altair microcomputer. When Ed Roberts sold the Altair to a big corporation, Bill Gates was suing him. Paul said Ed Roberts signed Bill's contract without reading it because, quote, I trust you guys. Well, Ed trusted Billy Gates and found out. Ed Roberts warned his new corporate lawyers about Bill Gates, but no one listened. They kept telling him they could deal with this guy. Ed said, it was a little like Roosevelt telling Churchill that he could deal with Stalin. This Ed guy funded Microsoft, Bill Gates' first real business partner, and he's calling Bill Gates Stalin. There is only one worse warlord in history, a little German man who rocked back and forth talking about population control, named Bill Gates.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. We will get the peak population to be as much as 1 billion below the current expected peak. That is about 8.3 billion versus 9.3.
It's a disgusting comparison. I won't have it, Ed Roberts. Bill Gates is far more ambitious. He's talking about preventing 1 billion lives here, mostly fetuses. Stalin only got rid of like 20 million full-grown humans, tops. But Bill did it to save the planet from super bad outcomes, right?
There's enough innovation here to avoid super bad outcomes. We have to frame it in terms of overall human welfare, not just everything should be solely for climate.
Okay, everyone in tech changed their mind on climate change. AI likes dirty power. They make money off of it. But I think everyone agrees poor babies turn into poor people, and Bill Gates doesn't like that.
That was the main thing we did because I thought, population growth in poor countries is the biggest problem they face.
But back in 1975, Ed Roberts was ready to partner with the first person to walk through his door with the Altair Basic software, and that was Paul Allen, not Bill Gates. Bill Gates hid because he had a baby face.
Sitting by an old original Altair, he showed me how he fed the computer a paper strip with their code punched into it and typed print 2 + 2.
And then I hit return, which is the same thing. And lo and behold, it printed 4. And a wave of relief surged over me because I almost couldn't believe it had worked the first time.
It was the beginning of the age of a computer in every home, on every desk.
Paul Allen's simulator worked flawlessly. He got there first, he got the contract, and Paul just assumed that our partnership would be a 50-50 proposition. But Bill had another idea. He wanted 60% for his work on Basic. 60%! It was only 6 weeks of work. Paul is such a nice guy. A little bit of a pushover. He says Bill was instrumental on Basic, so he agrees. Bill also argued that Paul had a salary. He got a day job at MITS with Ed Roberts. That was the Altair company, because Paul needed money to survive. Bill was a millionaire trust fund baby. It's weird, self-made billionaires, they never admit this, but he was definitely from one of Seattle's most prominent families. Ellen, you kind woman, can you ask Bill if he's a self-made billionaire?
You were like the youngest person to become a billionaire. Is that right?
Yeah, in terms of my own, earning it on my own, yeah.
Right. Okay, so, which is the most important thing, yeah.
Rich and modest, but Bill Do you ever feel bad for taking 60%? It just feels like you robbed Paul.
So, you know, I have to give him a lot of credit, but there wasn't going to be a company unless I dropped out. So I didn't feel that bad about the 60-40. There was a point where I pushed it even beyond that, that I do feel guilty about.
You should feel guilty about demanding 64% of Microsoft. 64% just because you're a rich boy who supposedly dropped out of Harvard. Paul should have put that boy on his lap and spanked him. So Bill took 64% of Microsoft to drop out of Harvard, but still slips in a special clause geared so that he can go back to Harvard full-time without losing a single share. Well, why did you take Paul's shares to drop out if you still... Did you even drop out, you little piece of shit?
I went on leave. Keep her on her toes. Yeah, you did. You actually wrote a nice letter and everything. You went on leave.
I might be back if it doesn't work.
Yeah, you did say that. It's kind of cool. They have the letter in here.
Unbelievable. He took Paul's shares but never dropped out. It's all a lie. It gets worse. Later, Paul invented the soft card. It was the hardware that allowed Microsoft to magically run on Apple computers. It literally changed the world. It opened the world to Apple, the top dog of little home computers, for selling all kinds of business software. Everyone made millions. The card alone accounted for half, 50% of all Microsoft sales. Paul did that. Paul's soft card brought them into the big leagues and gave them the money to land our big. It was a huge contract with IBM less than a year later. There would be no Microsoft without this deal or Paul. But the IBM contract was in jeopardy because it required an operating system, MS-DOS. Problem is, MS-DOS didn't exist. People just assumed the great Bill Gates invented it. No, but the Gates luck, sometimes known as Paul Allen, held again. Paul Allen happened to know Tim Patterson. Tim Patterson, the father of DOS. Bill Gates, you are not the father. And the D in DOS stands for dirty, like Bill Gates dirty. The original name is QDOS, literally quick and dirty operating system.
There's a local company here in Seattle called Seattle Computer Products, a guy named Tim Patterson, and he had done an operating system, very rudimentary operating system that was kind of like CP/M.
It was Paul Allen who bought the exclusive license of 86-DOS from Tim Patterson's boss, Rod Brock, at Seattle Computer. Paul says if Brock had known about IBM, he would have said, nope, Microsoft is totally ripping us off. But when Brock received the agreement, it had changed from what Allen had told him. It was now a sales agreement. This is nuts. An attorney who saw the original agreement said Gates personally changed key language to specify a sale of DOS instead of an exclusive license. Sneaky Billy boy. In business, it's good to be a sneaky little shyster.
So ended up working out a deal to buy the operating system from him for whatever usage we wanted for $50,000.
It had to be the deal of the century, if not the millennium. It was certainly the deal that made Bill Gates and Paul Allen multi-billionaires. And they turned around and licensed it to the world for up to $50 per PC.
He says, I knew it was a coup and that DOS would be a valuable asset, but I cannot say that we knew just how valuable it would be. They stole it, and it was the deal of a century, if not the millennium. By 1991, MS-DOS was making $200 million a year, every year, and they took it outright for only $50K. Paul Allen made them billionaires. He's not all innocent, but Bill still wanted all of his shares. This is where things get real dirty, because buying dirty DOS meant backstabbing Gary Kildall. Bill already had an operating system called CP/M, and it was invented by Bill Gates' business partner and good friend Gary Kildall. They went back a long way. CP/M helped Microsoft succeed because it was the standard operating system, the DOS before DOS. Microsoft could write basic software just one time and get on hundreds of different computers that ran CP/M. Instead of a business nightmare, Gary made life easy for his friend Billy Gates, and IBM wanted some.
But IBM hadn't done their homework.
They thought we had an operating system. Because we had this soft card product that had CP/M on it, they thought we could license some CP/M for this new personal computer they told us they wanted to do, and we said, well...
When we discovered we didn't have the
he didn't have the rights to do that, and that it was not, he said, but I think it's ready. I think Gary's got it ready to go.
IBM was clueless about home computers. This was going to be their first one, so Billy Gates sends them to the king of home computers, at least their software, his friend Gary Kildall, and everyone has a different story about how he got betrayed. Gary says he eventually reached an understanding that Digital Research, his company, would supply IBM with CP/M, its operating system. They eventually even reached a handshake deal with IBM. Then IBM immediately ghosted Gary. They stopped returning any of my phone calls. We now know that by this time, IBM, unable to bully Kildall into a bad deal in just that one afternoon, IBM had already gone back to Microsoft to scheme with Billy Gates.
Digital Research didn't seize that, and we knew it was essential. If somebody didn't do it, the project was going to fall apart.
So Bill says, oh, my friend didn't seize the opportunity to get screwed by IBM. I love screwing friends. Right, Stevie?
We just got carried away and said, look, we can't afford to lose the language business. Darn, we were going to ride the bear because the bear was the biggest, the most important. You just had to be with the bear. Otherwise, you would be under the bear in the computer industry, and IBM was the bear, and we were going to ride the back of the bear.
I like Steve Ballmer. He's insane. While Gary Kildall thinks he's still negotiating with IBM, he's under the bear, and his close friend and partner, Bill Gates, is secretly buying a dirty rival's product, Dirty DOS, for pennies. When Gary caught wind of this, he said, Bill's a friend. He wouldn't cut my throat. That's so sad. But Stalin would, and Gates did. And then he destroyed Gary's life multiple times over.
When asked about the IBM contract, Gates was quoted in London Times as saying Gary was out flying when IBM came to visit, and that's why they did not get the contract.
Gates plants the story that Gary was just out flying like an idiot and completely blew off the big IBM meeting, which spun him into a dark depression.
But Rolander says his friend was always haunted by the story of the day he went flying and the notion that he should have been Bill Gates.
What would happen is every time a reporter, anybody from the media, would talk with Gary, they would ask him, so what happened? Why didn't you get the IBM contract? You could have been Bill Gates. And Gary would hear that over and over and over again. And that would be very hard to live with.
Bill Gates' story destroyed him, and his story was mostly BS.
Gary Kildall was perhaps best known as the man who chose to go flying on the day IBM came calling. It was the event which dogged him his entire life. But his friends and co-workers alike agree that the story is mostly myth.
A Digital Research employee says they did fly to a scheduled morning meeting.
So Gary and I, as the story goes, were in fact flying. We flew up to the Bay Area, up to the Oakland airport, delivered the software to Bill, and flew back down and joined the IBM meeting. We were there for the meeting later in the afternoon.
But they still joined that last-minute IBM meeting in the afternoon. And I believe him. IBM says they didn't, but those nummies didn't even know who Gary was. And the IBM executive admitted that Gary was indeed scheduled to be in another morning meeting, the one he had to fly back from.
Gary had some other plans, and so he said, well, Dorothy will see you.
This had nothing to do with flying. Bill lied. It was about money and predatory contracts. What's clear is IBM and Bill Gates hoodwinked Gary Kildall, and it gets way worse.
To make matters worse, Rolander says the operating system Gates bought copied CP/M.
43 of the 45 functions were copied directly from CP/M.
Gates turned his back on his partner, Gary Kildall, abandoned his CP/M, and then secretly buys the knockoff version of CP/M. QDOS. Gary Kildall called it plain and simple theft in his unpublished memoir. He made his cash cow, MS-DOS, from CP/M. Right, Tim?
So I took a CP/M manual that I'd gotten from the retail computer store, $5 in 1976 or something, and used that as the basis for the application programming interface, the API for my operating system.
This is it, the operating system Tim Patterson wrote. He called it QDOS, the quick and dirty operating system. Microsoft and IBM called it PC-DOS 1.0. And under any name, it looks an awful lot like CP/M. Frankly, it's very hard to tell the difference between the two. The command structures are the same, so are the directories. As usual in the PC business, the prize didn't go to the inventor, but to the exploiter of the invention. In this case, that wasn't Gary Kildall. It wasn't even Tim Patterson.
You know who exploited both of them, but these numbnuts at IBM finally found out that they were buying dubious goods.
IBM then approached Microsoft and tried to license its clone of CP/M called QDOS. When IBM discovered that it might be facing a copyright lawsuit, they returned to DRI and struck a deal. DRI agreed to let IBM sell both CP/M and Microsoft DOS side by side, and to let the market decide which was best, but the deck was stacked.
So IBM finally agrees to buy Gary's CP/M for $10 a copy. It was always about money, and sell it right next to Gates's DOS. Gary knows his product is better, says, "Game on, I will defeat my dirty knockoff in a fair fight."
But a surprising price difference proved to be the beginning of the end for digital research. IBM priced Gates's PC-DOS at $40 and CP/M at $240.
They swindled Gary. Instead of selling his $10 CP/M for about $40 right next to the $40 DOS, they sold it for $240. A massive amount of money. They might as well have priced it at $1 million. Microsoft won with an unstable knockoff. IBM and Microsoft forced users to endure years of crashes with incalculable economic cost in lost data and lost opportunities. DOS crashed a lot. It gets worse. Somehow, this turned into one of the most infamous corporate sabotages in tech history. Gary Kildall later released DR-DOS. It was faster, cheaper, didn't crash, and started eating at Microsoft's market share. Gary was better. People say be better, but in business, I say be evil. Bill Gates was caught red-handed in an email directing his staff to make applications run with MS-DOS, Microsoft, and not run on DR-DOS. This is un-American Monopoly games. And when you actually loaded Windows on DR-DOS, it would say non-fatal error detected, just kicking Gary Kildall while he's down. In Bill Gates' defense, he might have a fetish for causing friends pain. A Microsoft VP was dumb enough to send another memo saying, what the user is supposed to do is feel uncomfortable, and when he has bugs, suspect that the problem is in DR-DOS, and then go out and buy MS-DOS. Microsoft VP Brad Silverberg, are you a idiot? I say be better at being an evil monopoly criminal, VP Brad. Gary wrote in his memoir, I have grown up in an industry with Gates. He is divisive. He is manipulative. He is a user. He has taken much from me and the industry.
Kildall was described as a bright, happy, and inquisitive person, but by 1994, friends say he had withdrawn from many of the things that made him happiest and was still haunted by those IBM contract wars.
Gary's real friends say he was so defeated that he sold digital research for only $120 million. Not even a billionaire. Poverty. Gary should have sued Bill Gates for being a bad friend because the new owners of Digital Research did sue, and Microsoft had to pay them $280 million. Microsoft also had to settle with the Justice Department for evil monopoly moves, and people found out about Bill Gates.
And for years and years, it was Bill Gates, the boy wonder, the man America loves to admire, the man everybody wants to be. Now all your press is Bill Gates, the man everybody hates, everyone wants to gang up on. What happened?
The American people turned on our Billy Boy. In the 1990s, people found it distasteful to destroy small businesses and do creepy things. They wanted to throw nerds like that off a cliff for that sort of behavior. Geez, Bill, is there a lesson here?
Well, he's dead, so, in general, you always have to be careful.
Bill didn't physically end Gary Kildall. That happened in a Monterey bar after he retreated from friends.
It was very challenging for me. I had been best man at his wedding, he'd been best of mine, and he retreated from that.
But Gary's close friends, they certainly blame Bill Gates.
He creates something that's for the good of mankind. It's coveted and taken by others. The pain is so great, he is destroyed. And basically, that's what happened to him. He was absolutely brilliant. Who knows what he might have discovered and done if he lived another 20, 30 years.
The end.